Ethan tightened his grip on the bouquet as the airport doors slid open, letting in the familiar scent of rain-soaked asphalt. The evening sky was bruised with twilight, and every heartbeat brought him closer to the moment he'd replayed 1,000 times in his mind, seeing Mia again. 6 months. That's how long it had been since he'd left for the overseas project that was supposed to secure their future. He remembered her standing in the terminal that day, tears hidden behind a brave smile, whispering, "Just don't forget me." He never did. Every message he drafted but never sent. Every photo he almost attached. Every late night when he wanted to call but didn't, all led to this day. He had planned everything. Show up at her door, surprise her with lilies, say the words he'd been too afraid to say before. "Mia, I'm ready now, ready for forever." The taxi pulled up to her neighborhood, that quiet row of houses, lined with oak trees and the sound of sprinklers whispering in the evening air. But as soon as he stepped out, something felt off. The street shimmered with leftover decorations, white ribbons tied around lampposts, pale petals scattered across the sidewalks. Music still seemed to linger faintly, like laughter that hadn't yet faded. He frowned, curiosity prickling his chest. A neighbor watering her garden looked up and smiled warmly. "Oh, you just missed a big celebration yesterday," she said. Ethan froze. "Celebration?" "Yes," the woman chuckled, misting the air. "A wedding." The whole neighborhood was glowing. "You should have seen it." The words hit him strangely. "A wedding?" He laughed under his breath, an uneasy, hopeful sound. Maybe Mia had helped organize it. She loved weddings, always cried during the vows. He adjusted the bouquet, his heart suddenly racing for reasons he couldn't name, and started walking faster toward her house, unaware that with every step, the ground beneath his certainty was quietly giving way. Ethan stopped at the edge of the walkway, the sight before him stealing the air from his lungs. Her front yard, once a quiet patch of green dotted with daisies, was now covered in soft rose petals, glimmering faintly in the dim light. White ribbons trailed from the porch railing, and a cluster of empty champagne glasses sat abandoned on the steps. It looked like the aftermath of a dream or a memory he wasn't invited to share. For a moment, he just stood there, unable to move. The word wedding echoed in his mind, replaying the neighbor's voice again and again. He swallowed hard. No, it couldn't be. Maybe she had hosted a friend's ceremony. Maybe this wasn't about her at all. But the uneasy tug in his chest said otherwise. He climbed the steps and knocked gently on the door, then harder when there was no answer. The sound echoed through the house. He could almost hear his own heartbeat in the silence that followed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the latch clicked, the door opened. Mia stood there. She was barefoot, her hair loosely pinned up, a few strands brushing against her neck. The soft white of her dress glowed in the golden light behind her, not a gown, but simple, delicate, the kind she once said she'd wear if she ever got married. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and her lips parted in disbelief. "Ethan," she breathed, her voice barely more than a whisper. He smiled nervously, holding up the flowers like a peace offering. "Hey, surprise." His throat tightened. "I came back early. I wanted to talk about us." For a moment, neither of them spoke. She seemed frozen, her fingers tightening on the edge of the door. Then, quietly, she stepped aside, letting him in. The living room was filled with traces of celebration, a half-deflated balloon drifting near the ceiling, an open gift box on the table, the faint scent of perfume and candles, and then he saw the framed photograph on the hallway table. Mia, standing in that same white dress, smiling, her hand entwined with another man's. The bouquet slipped slightly in his grasp. A dull roar filled his ears. She turned to him slowly, her expression unreadable, and in that fragile silence, Ethan understood that the door he had just walked through wasn't meant for him anymore. Ethan stood motionless in the middle of the room, staring at the photograph as though it might dissolve if he looked long enough. The man beside Mia in the picture had his arm around her waist, his face half turned toward her with that unmistakable expression, quiet, content, possession, and Mia's smile, It wasn't the shy, uncertain smile she used to give Ethan. It was peaceful, radiant, complete. He turned toward her slowly. "I heard there was a wedding," he said, his voice dry, cracking at the edges. "Who was it?" For a long heartbeat, Mia said nothing. She looked down at her hands, still twisting the ring on her finger as if trying to hide it. The air between them felt heavy, almost sacred in its silence. When she finally looked up, her eyes shimmered not with joy, but with something deeper, more fragile. "It happened yesterday," she said softly. The words struck him like a physical blow. Yesterday. Just yesterday, while he was on the plane, watching clouds drift by and planning how he'd surprise her. He'd been dreaming of proposing, and she'd been saying her vows to someone else. He took a step back, trying to steady himself, but the floor seemed to tilt beneath him. "You didn't even tell me," he whispered. "You could have said something. Written one word." Mia's voice trembled. "Ethan, I didn't think you'd come back. You stopped calling. You stopped answering. I thought," she exhaled shakily, "I thought you'd moved on." "I was working," he said through gritted teeth. "Every day, every hour for us. For the life we said we wanted." Her eyes filled with tears. "You were gone so long," she whispered. "I waited. I really did. But life doesn't wait forever." Ethan looked at her then, really looked at the ring, at the dress, at the faint traces of confetti in her hair. She was no longer his, not even a little. The realization hollowed him out from the inside. Mia reached out as if to touch him, but he stepped back. "Don't," he said, voice trembling. "Just don't." And yet, when she smiled that sad, broken smile, it wasn't cruel. It was full of memory and regret, and something he knew would haunt him forever. Because it was the same smile she'd given him the day he left, only this time, it meant goodbye. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was too deep, too fragile, like glass that would shatter with a single wrong word. Ethan stood by the window, staring out at the fading light, trying to find a version of reality where this wasn't true. Behind him, Mia stood near the hallway table, her fingers brushing the photo frame, tracing the outline of her new husband's face. Finally, Ethan turned to her, his voice low, almost hoarse. "Was it love, Mia? Or just time catching up with us?" She blinked, startled by the sharpness in his tone. "It wasn't like that," she said quietly. "It wasn't about choosing him instead of you. It was about learning to live when you stopped being part of my world." He laughed bitterly. "Stop being part of your world? I was halfway across the globe trying to build something for us. Every day I thought of coming home to you. Every night I fell asleep to the sound of your voice in my head." Her eyes glistened, and she took a hesitant step forward. I know you did it for us. But I didn't need a perfect future, Ethan. I just needed you. You were always somewhere else working, planning, fixing things that didn't even matter to me." His hands clenched at his sides. "So you gave up?" Mia shook her head slowly. "I held on for months. I told myself you'd call, that you'd surprise me, that someday you'd come back and everything would make sense again. But the longer I waited, the quieter you became, and then one day, I realized I was waiting for a ghost." The words cut deeper than he expected. A ghost. That's what he had become to her, an echo. A memory she had learned to live without. He took a shaky breath. "And him? Do you love him?" She hesitated, her lips trembling before she whispered. "He's kind. He listens. He makes me feel like I'm here, not somewhere in the past, not waiting for what might be. I didn't plan for it to happen. It just did." Ethan turned away, blinking rapidly as if that could stop the sting in his eyes. The bouquet lay forgotten on the table, the lilies wilting, their scent heavy in the air. Mia's voice broke the silence again, soft and trembling. "I wanted you to be happy too. I hoped we'd meet again someday, and maybe we'd smile about it." He let out a bitter laugh that wasn't really laughter at all. "Smile? You got married, Mia, to someone else. There's nothing left to smile about. Her shoulders sagged, her expression full of sorrow. I'm sorry, she whispered. He met her gaze one last time, eyes burning. You should be. And though his words were cruel, they weren't angry, just hollow. The sound of a man realizing that the love he thought would last forever had quietly died in his absence.